This episode contains mentions of graphic or sensitive material that may be triggering. Listener discretion is advised.
Crime Junkie AF.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show made by the Crime Junkie, Ashley Flowers, for those who are Crime Junkie AF. I am really excited about today's guest, also a little nervous. I feel like this is a little bit of Crime Junkie meets So Supernatural because we get to explore the supernatural side of solving crimes with none other than my next guest. She is a New York Times bestselling author, a professor of mediumship, host of the Dead Life podcast, and she also worked at one point alongside investigators to help solve cold cases using her gifts. So please welcome the world-renowned medium and profiler, Allison DuBois.
Thank you for having me.
I can't tell you, I'm actually so stinking excited. I feel like most people, if they know you, are going to know you two ways. If they're like me, they will know you from the show that was based on your life,
Right.
Medium,
Yes.
which was like my guilty pleasure. I've seen the whole thing 2 times all the way through. I have a zillion questions for you. And this was new to me because I'm not a reality TV person.
Yeah.
I had to do some homework before you came, but you were on The Real Housewives for a minute.
Yes, I was. I was a guest.
And you're having like a resurgence in this moment in time because
There's always a resurgence.
So even as someone who never watched The Real Housewives, I have someone here I work with who is obsessed, and she's trying to tell me about some nonsense that's going on in Salt Lake. I can't follow it.
Right.
But even I have heard about this infamous dinner episode. And so
It's slightly iconic.
I finally saw the clip in preparation for you coming. My anxiety was through the roof watching it.
Should try being there.
And now you predicted this like breakup. Now it has all come to a head so many years later. Is Bravo inviting you back? Are you going to go back? Are you going to mic drop?
I'm pretty sure the way it works is the original housewife that pitches the show for her city, I believe owns points on the show. They have more control.
Yeah.
Let's just say they have more control. That would be Kyle, who I made the prediction about. So are they having me back? Hell no.
You don't think so? I mean, at some point,
I don't
the
think
ratings alone, even I would tune in.
The ratings would be great. I don't think she cares about the ratings, obviously, because
That's fair.
it's supernaturally boring.
That's fair.
But I don't expect to be going back. I also turned them down on going on Watch What Happens Live.
Oh, yeah.
Right afterwards, they invited me on, and I said no. Because I was on my way to a charity event in Tucson. I was actually at the airport to go to a children's event. So I think there's a lot of egos at play in the Bravoverse.
You don't say.
Yeah, so I don't expect to be ever going back. Camille and I aren't really friends anymore, so there'd be no reason for me to be there. I was just there as sort of support for her. That's how Kelsey spun it for me to go with her, that she was being attacked by mean girls.
Yeah. Such like a blip in your life that I feel like is getting a spotlight right now because you have done so many other things.
Right.
You've been a practicing medium for 25 years.
Yeah.
Is that what I heard you? I was listening to your podcast this morning. Can you tell me like how does your gift work? I'd like to start there.
Okay.
Because I don't know that it works how people think it does.
Well, it's interesting because everybody thinks mediums and psychics have the same function, like that we do it in the same way. And
I didn't know there was a difference.
There is a difference. I became friends with John Edward, who had the show Crossing Over.
Okay, yeah.
We were on Oprah together years ago. And I didn't know he didn't have sight. I just assumed all mediums could see the other side. And so some mediums can only see it, but they can't hear it. Some can hear it and can't see it. Some can do all of that, which is what I do.
Okay.
And so when I bring them through...
And wait, is that different than a psychic?
Okay. Psychics predict future events and they can tap into energy.
Okay.
Mediums talk to the dead.
Okay.
So just to give the difference, and most mediums are psychic as well, and most psychics are not mediums. So that's why you'll see so many psychics when you Google anything, a service of that sort. And fewer mediums, because mediums have to be validated on the spot, because we're talking about somebody you lost, and you're able to validate the information. With a psychic prediction, you have to wait for it to pass.
Okay, got it.
So mediums are a better way to go if you're looking for somebody with abilities because they have to prove themselves time and time again. Yeah.
So when did you know that you had this gift?
Well, I was 6. And
6?
And I went to my first funeral. So my great-grandfather died of intestinal cancer. He was in a lot of pain. I remember that. He was a very sweet man. And I went to his funeral and I saw him in the casket and I'm 6. So I thought, oh, he's taking a nap and he's going to wake up and feel better. Because that's what they did with us. They laid us down for a nap and we became less cranky. So I thought somehow it was going to fix him. I didn't really understand death. And my mom brought me home and she put me to bed and she went to bed. And I looked at the foot of my bed and I saw my great-grandfather and he had no lines on his face. He looked older, and now I know why they do that. For children, they'll look closer to the age they were when they died so they can identify them, so we know who they are. Otherwise, we'd see some young man that's 25 be like, who are you? And it would freak us out. So this is a way for us to identify them.
Do they appear differently to different people?
When I bring them through for clients, they go back to the age they were the happiest on earth. So when they fell in love, when they got married, when they had a baby, sometimes when they won a Golden Globes prize fight, because I've brought through a lot of athletes and comedians and people like that too. So they go back to their heyday, whatever their heaven was.
Okay.
And so I'll give the age. And 9 times out of 10, the person's like, that's when my mom and dad met, or that's when my son was the happiest before his chemical imbalance took a hold. So he did that for me so I'd be able to recognize him as my great-grandfather. No lines on his face, though. There was the age was gone somehow, even though I could tell it was my grandfather. And he said, tell your mom I'm not in pain anymore and I'm still with her. And those were his exact words. So I hopped out of bed, little redhead, black button eyes, Mom, ran to her room, gave her the messages, and she just looked at me really angrily and she said, go back to bed. And so I went back to bed and he wasn't there anymore. And so I was like, is he mad at me too? Did he leave? I didn't understand. So it was very confusing, and that's what I learned, to not share what I was seeing with my mother.
Did it happen a lot after that?
Oh, yeah. It's kind of funny because I'm an Aquarius and we actually really like being alone. We don't need other people around. We're not that person. We're not team players. Yeah. And so I'd have old men in my room while I'd be playing a tea party that would be playing poker, and they'd have suspenders and the mustache and the hat. I reminded them of their granddaughter, but I could see them, and they liked watching me play with my dolls. And so they just sit there and play poker and smoke stogies, and I was totally comfortable with that. That's how I grew up.
How do they find you? Is it location-based?
It's more energy that gravitates to the energy it needs, or that it vibes with. So they probably miss their granddaughters. Their granddaughters probably miss them. And being around me, they were able to interact. So they were around me.
So you never had a conversation with your mom about this, I assume, for a long time. You just kind of stopped.
With my mom, I stopped. As I became a teenager, my friends knew. So they would say, what do you think of my boyfriend? I'm like, so it was kind of a Kyle situation, but it was in the making. And I'd say, I keep seeing a blonde with him. I think he's talking to his ex. I would not trust.
Oh my God, what a fun friend to have in high school.
Relationship with you. I don't trust him with your heart. And they get mad at you. Yeah. They shoot the messenger. And so even when it turns out he was cheating with the blonde ex-girlfriend, you still represent that infidelity to them. It's your fault somehow. They project. And that's what Kyle did to me.
Yeah.
So I was not surprised.
You're like, been here, done this.
Yeah. So it didn't hurt. She was nobody to me. It wasn't like losing a friend. I'm like, no love lost.
You're like, you asked.
Yeah. Whatever. And so it started there. And then, as you know, and I think this was something we were going to touch on when I was 17. And I moved the bed. So I heard that voice that had always been protecting me say, move the bed. And my friend Barbara was standing there, and we were 17,
And when you say I hear a voice, is it a feeling? Is it actual, an audible voice to you? What is it? To describe it to people who don't know.
Sometimes it's outside of your head. You'll actually hear somebody yell something or say a name. And sometimes it's in your head. And that's why people dismiss communication from the other side, because they're thinking it's their thought and it's just what they want to hear. But in reality, that's how they communicate with us. It's part of their language. So they will speak to us within our mind, or a sense of us knowing that it's them. They'll speak through our heart. And so they're telepathic. So they're telepathically communicating with us without having to open their mouth, which we're also capable of. It's how I can pull thoughts off of killers, is I tap into their head and I pull the blueprint of their energy. What was the motive? Did they know the victim? Was it sexually motivated? Was it financially motivated? What matters to them? Were they beaten as a child? I pull all this information and put it together. So to me, it's the same process as tapping into somebody's ex-boyfriend or Maurizio. Whatever. So
do you need to be in the presence of someone? No, it's just...
No, I was trained in a laboratory, so I had to be able to pull information. And so I just take the first name of the person they want to hear from. I read a lot of wives. They give me their husband's first name.
Oh, really?
And, yeah. And I'm like, month and day they were born.
Oh, my God, never. I don't want to, I love my husband to death. I don't want to know what's in his head.
I actually wrote a chapter called Do You Really Want to Know?
Fuck
because
no.
I was so tired.
No.
I was so tired of people asking me things, and then they were sorry because I'll tell them the truth.
Unknow.
I'll tell them the truth, though. I'm like, you don't hire me to not hear the truth.
Yeah.
And so when, say, Kyle asked about what I got on her, honestly, that was the thing that stood out in her energy the most, was the threat in the marriage. I answered honestly. Did I answer with panache? Yes.
I loved it. So take us back to this moment. So you're 17. In that moment, what was the voice? A scream? What was it?
So it was the same voice that had been talking to me internally since childhood. So it had already saved my life one other time when I was 11.
What happened then?
I was on my bicycle and I was riding home. It was daytime. I lived in a cul-de-sac. And so it's so weird to look back because I've worked so many missing children's cases now. I know exactly how they become isolated in that 30-second or 60-second window. So I was in front of an alley that was in between this street and the street I lived on. So I needed to make a left on my bike on the sidewalk. And ironically, on the other side of the gate, that was my best friend's house. So this car pulled up, and it was two men. And I'm older now, so I understand because I was 11 at the time. But they wanted me to get in the car. They wanted me to go for a ride. And I'm on my bicycle, and something was telling me not to approach the window. Like I knew not to approach. And they were like, come here, come here. They're like, we'll drive you home. That's what they kept saying. We'll drive you home. And this urgency, this urgent feeling, and my house being flashed through my head over and over again, like, go.
To get home.
And so I took off on my bike because I was in shock. I was sort of paralyzed in the moment when they were doing this because as a child, we're very sensitive. I was feeling fear on such a high level.
Yeah.
Like I knew this was bad.
Yeah.
And so their car was faced in the opposite direction that I was going. So they must have turned around in our cul-de-sac, maybe made a wrong turn. So it was just, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, took off, got to my house, told my mom. She did what the majority of parents do with reported child abductions, and she did not report it. And so I survived that. And then at 17, when I was going to a party with my friend Barbara. and I heard the voice, say, move your bed. It was the same energy to the presence that was communicating with me. So I didn't think anything of it. So I moved my bed from the south wall to the east wall.
You're like, real quick before we go to this party, I just need to rearrange some furniture.
That's what I did. And Barbara was like, why did you do that? And I said, that voice, it told me to do it. So like it saved my life before. So I listened. She's like, well, what's that going to do, moving your bed? I'm like, I don't know.
You're like, hasn't let me down yet.
Right?
So.
That's kind of, I didn't question it.
Doesn't hurt anything.
It was a faith that I had because I'd been connected to it since childhood. And that night, she and I came back from the party. She was spending the night because, her mom curfew, all that, how that works. And a truck drove through my bedroom wall. that night, in the middle of the night. And so I woke up because the cement blocks were falling on our legs as the wall was coming down. And there were headlights in the room. And I'm I was probably a little buzzed. So, Kegers back in the day, good times. And I saw the headlights, so I thought it was my best friend, Susie. And I was like, Susie, just back your car out. We'll put a poster over the hole in the wall.
Oh, my God. I think you were more than a little tipsy.
I think so. Well, we had jungle juice back then, so probably. And
we'll put a poster over it.
I know. I'll put a poster over it. Teenagers, no problem. It's fine. And then I realized what was happening because Susie's mom, Sherry, opened the door and she looked at me shocked, and because she had just said, thank God Allison didn't come home last night, Allison and Barbara. And then she saw we were in the bed and she was like, oh my God. And there were cops and fire departments, and it was a drunk driver that had gone over 3 lanes of traffic, over a divider, through a backyard fence, and through the back wall of the house. And it would have killed us because where I moved the bed from would have been under the wheels of her truck. So literally I would have had the drunk driver above me as we're under it. So I moved the bed to the only place in the room where we could have survived. It wasn't that big of a room.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. So I always listen to the voice. Skeptics are like, how do you prove it? I'm like, you know what? I don't need to hear your arguments. This voice has saved me. It's always been there for me, and I'm going to listen to it before I ever listen to you criticize me.
Have you ever thought about the men that tried to take you or whoever they were?
I did. There were paper boys that were disappearing around that time that were being molested. And statistically, and you probably are aware of this, but maybe your audience is not, girls around the age of 11 are the most highly abducted and murdered of all children under the age of 18. So 11 is when we start giving them freedom. 11-year-old girls are actually the biggest target because they're in between puberty and childhood. So their pedophiles are attracted to them. So I'm just glad my instincts were there and that voice. And I said back then, I'm going to grow up and put people like that away. So that's where I started my journey of wanting to be a prosecutor, was around that time.
And tell me about that. What did that journey look like for you?
So the first glimpse I got of that was when the TV show Adam came out, about Adam Walsh.
Yes, I've seen it.
And I was a little girl, so I was probably around 9 then. And he was 6, I think, when he disappeared. And I heard the word decapitated for the first time. And I thought, who would hurt a little boy like that? Like, what's out there that does that? So then at 11, I saw what was out there that did that. And so I already had decided I wanted to be someone who put bad guys away when I was 9. But then at 11, when that happened to me, I was shown what the victim feels like, seeing it through their eyes. I go through the perpetrator because I don't like emotionally getting pulled into the victim's story. I try and go through the motives, things that can actually help the police.
Yeah.
And so that happening sent me on a quest to go to law school and become a judge eventually. A Superior Court justice is what I wanted.
That was the goal?
That was the goal. That's why I didn't get a tattoo. That's why I didn't do half the things I didn't do, because I'm like, I'm going to be a judge someday. That would look
Can't have a neck tattoo.
Right? No, that was never in peril of that. So yeah, I lived life to be a judge and went to school and did all the proper things, took my LSATs, and ended up being professional medium instead. So
when did that sharp left turn happen?
So Joe and I got married when I was 21. We've been together since I was 20. So
Because you just knew?
I knew.
Does it work for you?
I knew it was him.
Okay.
I knew, not in the beginning, though. I actually was going to pass up the love of my life. When I met him, I'm like, you're not my type. I'm not interested. I was on my sort of villain era as a girl where I'm like, I'm going to be like guys are and date who I want and do who I want. I don't want a relationship. I was in that
love
place.
That for you.
I was tired of being locked down in relationships because I had relationship energy, apparently.
Okay.
And guys were just, as soon as I was broken up with one, another one's like, hey. And I'm like, oh, God. So women are like, there's no nice guys. I'm like, well, I smashed most of their hearts, I think, back in the day. But then I met my husband. He's a rocket scientist.
Oh.
And I didn't really believe him because we were at an ASU bar. It was called Gators back in the day.
Okay.
So I met my husband and we started having kids. And I was fainting in pregnancy and they couldn't figure out why. And this ties into me at the laboratory, so I promise there's a conclusion. I would be at a grocery store and I'd just drop to the ground, like black out. And so they sent me to the chief neurologist at Barrows Neurological Institute in Phoenix. And he ran brain scans, the MRIs, all of the tests you could put someone through. And he sat us down and I kept the tape recording of it, actually. And he said, you have activity in your brain that looks like it mirrors epilepsy, but you're not epileptic. And he's like, I've never seen this. He said, I don't have an answer for you. He said, after you have the baby, if this keeps happening, come back. And so I went to the laboratory a few years later. I thought they were going to hook me up because I wanted to know, do mediums have different brain activity that mirrors epilepsy? Take my blood, look at my blood. I wanted to know.
Can we pinpoint this in people?
That's what I thought we were going to do. Instead, they put me through rigorous testing, testing my level of skill and my accuracy for 4 years.
4 years?
4 years. And
wait, what lab?
This was at University of Arizona.
Okay.
And Gary Schwartz ran the lab then. And I saw him on TV, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go there. I'm going to prove I'm average at this. I'm going to go finish law school and live my life because I don't need this. I didn't want to do this. And so they put me through testing, and my mentor at the time, she went with me, and we were both being put through the same test, and they ended up cutting her from the lab. She wasn't accurate enough, and they kept me. And they were like, what you're doing is extraordinary, and so we need to study you. And they kept writing books on me for 4 years. We got to keep you in the dark for now. Got to keep you in the dark, but all will be revealed. That's exactly what he'd say. After 4 years, I realized he was just writing books based on my results, and I left. So I did spend 4 years. John Edward was also studied there. Laurie Campbell was studied there. The testing was amazing, though, in difficulty level.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot. But that's where I learned. I'm also a competitive person, which didn't hurt. So I learned how good you should have to be, to do this professionally. So then I was looking at all these other mediums like
these yahoos.
I'm like, is there a B or a C? Or I'm like, what is this?
Is it a skill you can hone? Or you have it or you don't?
I think that most people, you have to take what you have and cultivate it.
Okay.
And some people have it more than others.
Totally.
And I believe it's genetic. It runs in families. And I hear this all the time. People will say, well, I'm not like you. But, I dream about dead people and I know things before they happen. I'm like, so you are like me.
So what do you mean you're not like me?
Yeah. So that was interesting. But everybody's had a grandmother or an aunt that used to do tarot or had dreams that somebody died. Everybody's got one in their family, it seems. So I believe it's more prevalent than people realize. Yeah. And certain generations suppressed it because it was bad, which is why my mom reacted to me the way she did.
Was she familiar with it at all or not?
My mom had a lot on her plate, and here's what I learned about mediums and psychics. They can have bad judgment because my mom isn't intuitive and she can tap in, but I think a lot of people with abilities don't know any different than their own experience. Yeah. So they assume they're not really doing that much. But my mom, God love her, she's also been married 5 times. So some people just have bad judgment. They'll let their mind override their gut feeling, right? So it's like, oh, he's bad for me. Oh, no, that's just me. That's fear talking, and women go with them anyways.
I know.
And then it blows up and they're like, oh, I should have listened. I knew. Yeah. I mean, so many of my clients tell me when they were going to walk down the aisle, they knew. They shouldn't have. And they did anyway because everything was ordered and the expectations. It's like, stop yourself in
Trust
that
your gut.
moment. Trust your gut. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Because the groom's better off with someone that'll actually love him. And you're better off going on your pursuit of somebody who is real in your life.
And I think that everyone, there's an exception to everything. But I think for the most part, people have very loud or strong guts, and we quiet them over our lives.
We let our mind override it.
Yeah.
We explain it away.
Yeah.
We're our own worst skeptic.
Yeah.
When it comes to those moments. And I've even been guilty of it. And I get mad at myself and I'm like, Allison, you're you. Like, what are you doing? You're like,
yeah.
Listen. But sometimes it's easier for people to let their mind win that argument against their inner voice.
Yeah.
And I just learned, especially as a professional medium, I trust the dead way more than I trust the living. So if the dead tell me something, I know it's true. And so I learned how to stand my ground in client readings. For instance, in the beginning, I had a woman that I read. My mentor was in the living room. It was one of her friends. And I'm reading her. I'm bringing the husband, this one wasn't dead. He was still alive. She said, what about my husband? And she's asking me, and I'm automatic writing on the impressions I'm getting. I was like, he's having an affair. And she was like, oh my God, he wouldn't cheat on me. He worships me. He totally loves me. And I said, well, look, this is what I'm getting. This is the information that I'm picking up from the other side. This is what they're telling me is going on in your life. And she was like, okay, well, let's move on. And we go through the reading, and then she leaves. And my mentor goes, her husband is cheating on her. She's like, she knows he's cheating on her. She just is in denial, doesn't want to talk about it, and doesn't want it said out loud. So then I never questioned it again.
So how did you find yourself in crime solving, law enforcement?
Okay, so it started with Adam. And then I started carrying an attaché case. I was a weird kid. I watched 60 Minutes. I was always,
you were a crime junkie is what you were.
I was a crime junkie as a child. Yeah, it started early. You need children's crime junkie t-shirts.
Listen, I needed a whole series. Yeah.
And so I was interning in homicide. And the fact that I even got the internship
And this is at the prosecutor's office, right?
Yeah, this was at the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. And it was interesting because I knew me getting the job was divine. I knew it was from somewhere else because I was stuck between, do I want to do divorce custody law or homicide, like a prosecutor? And I'm like, well, as a kid, I always wanted to put the bad guys away, but I could help kids in custody situations and have like a child psychologist on staff and help them. So I was a little torn. So I went to homicide and they all told me no. Like everybody in homicide said no. They really didn't want me there. The women were kind of mean, quite honestly. Yeah, I was 28 at the time and they were not liking me being around. And so I'm sitting waiting for my parking to be validated. This man comes and sits next to me, starts talking to me, and he said, why are you here? And I said, I'm here for an internship. Like, I really wanted to see if this was my path. And he said, did they find a place for you? And I said, no, they told me you didn't need any. He's like, don't need any. He's like, I need someone to organize my files and help put things together for court. He's like, you can be my intern. And I was just like, really? So he walks me back through the bullpen of women on the phone. And he's like, this is the new intern. This is Allison DuBois. And I'm just like, hi.
Who is the man?
Let's just say he was very high up in his division. He's retired from there since, but although he met with the producers of Medium and they know who he is, I've never outwardly named him because I don't want him to have to answer for my life.
Okay.
But he knows who he is, and he's still a very good friend, important, pivotal in my life. But Glenn Caron met him, and so when he made Manuel, his character Davalos, around this man and his persona. So that was pretty great. So anyways, it was my job to sort crime scene photos to go to court. And I was sorting the photos and I was noticing that I was seeing what was happening in flashes before the person was killed. And he was like, what's wrong? Because I guess I looked a little troubled, and I said, I swear I'm seeing what happened moments before these people were killed. And he was like, that's interesting. He said, what are you doing? And I said, I feel like maybe I'm getting in the head of the perpetrator because, like, I know what the motive is here. And he said, can you do that with a jury? Can you head tap jurors? And I said,
Did he have any context for you, your life, or anything? Or it was just when you were looking at these pictures?
He was intuitive himself.
God.
And he believed, even though he's like straight up the best prosecutor I've seen in my life. This commands the courtroom. And so I said I could try. So he sent me to one of the DA's homes, and she had the jury questionnaires. So I had to go through and put people on a jury that the defendant's counsel wouldn't care if we put them on because they get like a certain amount of strikes where they can strike some of your people and we can strike some of yours. So I wanted to put people on the jury for our victim who was raped, tortured, and murdered. She was an ASU law student. That was my first case. I wanted to assemble a jury with women who knew what it was like to be victimized. Women who are raped carry a victim energy. So as I'm looking at the names on the questionnaires, I could feel the ones who had been through something. I wanted them on my jury, even though they said they were against the death penalty, because I was pretty sure we could flip them as soon as they empathized with our victim and saw the gravity of it was animalistic what he did to this woman. And once they saw the level of carnage, I figured we could flip them. And it took 7 days. And when a jury's out for that long, you're normally going to get a hung jury or even a not guilty because the one holdout gives in. And I was taking my kids to TGI Fridays on this particular day, and I looked at the TV, and it was him. It was the man I worked for. And he was doing a press conference announcing that we got our guilty verdict on this man. And that was my first case where they brought me in to do that. And he's like, I don't know how you did that, but can you do it again? And the woman, the female DA's house that he took me over to, she could not stand me in court. Like, she didn't think I should be there.
Yeah.
She's like, I assembled my own jury. He went with yours instead. Like, she was upset. And rightly so, because maybe I wouldn't have been as accurate.
Right.
And he gambled on me, and that's a big gamble. I get that. It's been so many years, I feel like I can talk about this now.
Did she come around?
She ended up being one of my best friends.
Get out of here.
So then she asked me to help her on one. And I was on NyQuil. I had a cold. I was so sick this one more day. And she goes, I need to know if the jury's going to come back for us and when. I'm like, oh, is that all? Anyways, so I told her the day and I told her the time. And so I went back to sleep on my NyQuil and my phone rang and she's like, okay. She's like, the jury's back with a verdict. She's like, you were off by 4 minutes. I was like, sorry, Patty, whatever. She's like, that was pretty good. She's like, I know you're sick, but get dressed. We're going to go drink some margaritas. I was like, I really don't feel it. She's like, I don't care. She's like, this is too big not to celebrate.
Wild.
So that's how I sort of progressed through the office of DAs. And I loved it. I did it 6 times.
Yeah.
There was one that there was a loophole. We could not get this man. It really bothered me because the little girl was only like 3 and she was killed in his trailer. He was babysitting for parents that were meth addicts. And they found her body in his trailer, but they couldn't prove it was him because there was no DNA on her body. So she was
in his trailer, though?
Yes, in his trailer. And he said, I went to the store, I came back, she was dead. It still leaves doubt. And so they couldn't they weren't going to be able to get him. And that just bothered me so much. Not just that happened to her, but that where were her parents, you know, and that there are a lot of parents out there like that on drugs that just aren't parenting their kids and protecting them. So I initiated the Amber Alert in the state of Arizona and served on the task force to design it in 2001, I believe. And it was during my internship I was doing this because I was called by the Texas Rangers, which is the first episode of Medium, to go out on a case that I had sent them information on that hadn't been released to the public.
Did you cold reach out to them?
Yeah.
Why? How did
Well, it was like the first episode. My husband...
So it's really just like the first episode?
He wrote it down.
Oh, I can't wait to call my mom and tell her.
And he faxed it to the law enforcement, sent it off to them, so they called and said they want you in Texas. The first episode was the most accurate to my life.
Really?
Yeah, that was my favorite episode. My daughter, the baby, even wore the monkeys around her neck with the little Velcro hands.
No way!
So, yeah, she collected those for years. So, that's how I really got started, but then so much happened. Okay, so that happened. I'm interning while I'm being studied by scientists. Then Hollywood reaches out to the scientists and says, send us some of your best mediums. And so that's a whole other part of my life. And then Medium catches Kelsey Grammer's eye, and he's like, I want to make a show based on your life. I'm like, I'm 32. Like, I'm not old enough to have a show based on my life. And they just thought it was such a fascinating story. I couldn't work with the prosecution anymore, which was my favorite thing to do. I felt like I was finally doing what I loved.
If you were doing the show?
People knew who I was. I'm in the courtroom, so people sitting on the jury either love me and might fine for us just for that, or they don't believe in it, and I just hurt the prosecution.
Yeah.
So I was recognizable. I was everywhere at that time. I was all over the press because we did a huge press blitz. And I had to say goodbye to the one thing that felt right. Yeah. So.
Do you wish the TV show never happened?
No. I mean, I really do think everything happens for a reason, and I believe that Medium made it acceptable for people in all walks of life to embrace their gifts. And I think it gave a lot of people an anchor, something to ground them, to know they weren't alone. So Medium had to come out, and I was the brazen one that would do it, you know, that would lay it on the line. So I had a lot of mediums and a lot of backlash. So like, how'd you get a show? I'm like, I didn't even try. I'm sorry. I knew you'd like to hear.
You're out there like pitching in Hollywood.
I never did that. And Kelsey was co-producing the show that I was out there to do as one of the mediums that they were testing. And I became friends with them. And I asked him to write a blurb for the cover of my first book, Don't Kiss Them Goodbye. And the rest was history, which led to me knowing Camille, which led to Housewives. Like, my whole life is just seriously, oh my gosh. So 7 seasons really wasn't enough to put my life on display.
That's a lot. Wow.
Yeah. So I do miss it. But even my friend Patty, she said I could talk about her now. She doesn't care. But she retired from the DA's office, and she put the, baseline killer, serial killer on death row. She was one of the DAs that did that.
Oh, wow.
She's a badass. And so she retired, and I looked at Joe and I said, she put in 20 years. She gets a pension in retirement. I said, I put in 20 years doing this pro bono. I said, I'm retiring from that part of doing what I do. I said, I can't hold any more images of children that were murdered or meet any more parents of murdered children. Like, I can't. And the dates, like now dates are connected to people that are victims in my head. A date rolls around. It's not just January 2nd. It's the day Nicole Biggs or Mikkel Biggs disappeared, it's all connected for me. And
did you do a lot of like private consulting work then with families with?
No, I only worked with law enforcement.
Okay.
Because I was part of law enforcement in prosecution, I knew what information they needed evidentiary
Okay.
wise. Like evidence-wise, I knew what helped them and what didn't. And I say this to psychics who want to profile. They think it's so glamorous. It's the most thankless thing you'll ever do. You hardly ever, you get the thank yous in the beginning and then you never hear from them again after the body's found.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't get to go to the funeral. It's, you know, it's not usually like that. But aside from that, they don't know what information to give them. They're talking about how the victim felt. Yes, we know the victim was in pain. We know bad things happened to the victim. Stop talking about it. That's not what the family needs to hear. So when I'd work a case, I was coming at it from the perspective of law enforcement. What can I tell them? Did they miss a video camera? This was a Chicago case I was brought in on by a friend that was Chicago PD. There was a murder case, and it was a man who had killed an old lady in the subways or something around there, and they couldn't get him. And I said, you missed a camera. I said, it was recorded. And they went back, and she found the camera, and they got the footage, and they got the guy. So sometimes it's as easy as that, and sometimes it's harder. If it's a stranger child abduction, there's no connection to the victim for me to make. It's so much harder than if it's a husband that killed for, you know, the life insurance, or if it's sexually motivated because a girl stepped out on her boyfriend. You know, that I can pull so easy.
And is that because it has some kind of like emotional stickiness?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah, because I can feel the connection between the victim and the killer, because there was a connection. When it's somebody that grabs you off the street, there was no pre-existing connection. There's no energy between those two people. There's only fear in the victim, and then there's law enforcement trying to come in and figure out of 8 billion people who killed this person, if they're lucky enough to have a body. So I always tell psychics that can profile, and this is my students included, make a best friend who runs cadaver dogs. Tap into the cadaver dog running community, partner with them, work a case together, find the remains. That's how you prove yourself to the police.
Interesting.
So, because they're like, well, how do I get in where you were? I'm like, I'm pretty sure my story only happened like one time.
Yeah.
And it was to me.
Yeah.
You know, it was all doors were opened by the right people at the right time.
Yeah.
And that's how I know it was divinely laid out. So,
is there a case, I mean, you worked so many, that really stays with you?
So just last year, right after the Kyle epiphany, Natalie Holloway was one of the last cases I had provided information on. And I always said she was in the water. Said she's in the water. Vandersloot did it. This is what happened.
Yeah.
I mean, I went on news programs. It was not a secret. And they finally got his admission last fall, I believe, sometime around that. So I was able to close that in my mind because the answers were there. There's only one case after that one out of all the cases I've ever worked that has no conclusion, and it was Mikkel Biggs. And that will always bother me. She was my driving force in starting an Amber Alert in Arizona, serving on the task force to design it. I actually asked her mother to come with me to knock on doors to get the Amber Alert passed into Arizona. So that it was a law, it was a function that we had available to us, because the majority of stranger abductions, I believe the FBI statistic is they're killed, the low statistics within 7 hours, but it's usually really within like 3. So as soon as they're removed to a remote area, they're dead. Unless they're one of the miracles that survives the strangulation or whatever the mode of murder was. And the Amber Alert, they in Dallas, Fort Worth area, they were using it there. So when I went to Texas for my first case, which was the Opal Jennings case, she was a little girl. When I went out there, the cop that I was riding in the car with was telling me about the Amber Alert and that it was created for Amber Hagerman, who was raped and murdered in the Fort Worth area. And so that's why I brought it back to Arizona, because they only had it in the Fort Worth, Dallas-Fort Worth area and in San Diego. Those were the only 2 places in the entire country that had it. So this was a long time ago, mind you. And so I wanted it in Arizona. And with Tracy Biggs' help, Mikkel's mother, we knocked on enough doors that J.D. Hayworth was the only politician that actually called us back and listened to us and helped us implement it. Clear Channel is worried about being sued because they're like, what if it's a prank? I'm like, what if it's not?
Yeah.
What if it's a real child abducted? It's not worth it. If we have to deal with pranks, so be it.
Yeah.
And then they were worried about, well, what if they don't meet the age requirement? What if it's an old person? I'm like, can we cross that bridge after we get like the bones of this put down? I knew Molly Bish's story because I had met her parents through Tracy Biggs, and she was a lifeguard that was abducted from her post.
Story.
And so I got them to raise the age to 17 in Arizona, because at the time it was 15, because they thought a lot were runaways.
Yeah.
I'm like, a lot of them aren't. And so they did raise it to 17, so I did that. That made me proud.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so... and at the same time, I had a child abduction prevention video that I produced.
I heard about this. Wait, so you did this as part of your program in school, right?
I just, as my senior elective project.
Okay.
I was in homicide at the time. I hired a production crew, and I wrote the script. It's so hard to watch that now. I look so unnatural. I was so bad, but I was in my suit and trying to look all grown up.
The attaché still?
Yeah, the attaché, but I was like 28, trying to look 48, and I looked 25, actually.
But do the tips still hold true today?
Except for the technology advancements. So one of them was, and I wish they just taught this regularly because it's such a helpful tip, and I'll share it with your listeners. And we do what to do, what not to do reenactments.
Okay.
So all my friends' kids were in this, and all my nieces and nephews. And so if your kid's riding a bike, you have to teach them first not to approach the car. But now that they've approached the car, what do they do to defend themselves? So that's what the video is for.
Okay.
We teach them what not to do, but if they do it, how do they get out of it? Because nobody was teaching that.
Yeah.
They're supposed to wrap their arms and legs around the frame of the bike, because when they try and pull you through the window,
even the car door,
they can't get them through, and they have to drop you and get out and go around. It gives you time to get away, to scream, to make noise. They're not able to just pull you off your bike into the car, that happens.
Yeah.
So I had all of these. I even used from Mikkel Biggs. They had said she went out to get ice cream. And they found the 2 quarters laying on the sidewalk, And so I got a tape with ice cream truck music on it. And I had a scene where a scary-looking dude, who was actually just part of production, nice guy, put it in his little tape deck, and he's driving down the road playing the ice cream music in a residential neighborhood, and kids are just running out of the houses.
That's terrifying.
That would be an easy ploy, wouldn't it?
Oh, my God.
So I was trying to get parents to think.
Yeah.
And
spark these conversations.
Yeah. And I always lived as though I lived next to a pedophile, because you don't know. So with my 3 daughters, if they wanted a sleepover, I'm like, for sure, here.
At my house.
Yeah. You can invite as many of your friends as you want. We've got a trampoline. We got a pool. It'll be fun.
Here.
Because you never know when there's a creepy cousin or a teenage brother's best friend.
Who invites a friend over, yeah.
Right. Because when serial killers get started, a lot of them start stretching their legs in their teens. And they usually will use somebody younger or easier to subdue, to control. And that can be little sister.
Yeah.
So, I was always very aware.
Wow. Are there any other must-know tips from the video?
Sorry, it's been so long. My youngest was in a baby carrier in it.
Oh my God.
She's like 25 now.
Do they have the same gift you do?
They all have the same gift, not to the intensity that I do, but
Okay.
they're still young. But I don't think they got hip. I got it from both sides of my family.
Oh, okay.
they grew up knowing what being roofied was. And I just raised them to know these things and to stay with their friends and keep an eye on their friends and get security at the bar if your friend's slurring or being dragged anywhere or being walked out by some guy you don't know, stop them. Don't worry about offending somebody.
Be rude, stay alive. That's what we say.
Right? I always said that to my kids. I'm like, you can scream, you can claw, do whatever you need. I will be okay with it. I have your back.
Yeah.
So
it's not your job to make anyone feel comfortable or like you like them or whatever.
And being polite has made probably for the majority of child victims because they don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. Yeah. And so the Mikkel Biggs case, that really bothered me. It was like a 30-second window that it was narrowed down to. Like her sister came right back. The little sister, Kimber, went home, told her mom, she's like, don't leave your sister alone, go back. She goes back. Gone. And she's gone. It was that fast. And they were just a few houses down that residential street.
And were you ever able to see anything
I
on that? I
wasn't working cases when I heard about that case, mind you.
Okay.
I'm tainted. I saw too much. I will only work cases where I don't know anything.
Oh, interesting.
I have to go in blank. Otherwise, I don't know what I saw in a television special and what I'm picking up on. And so I try and teach my students that. I'm like, if you know anything about the person you're reading, you're not the right medium for them because you're going to weave in things that you already know and you don't know how much of that you're going to contaminate it.
Yeah.
You can't give a clean reading. So because I knew who Mikkel was because it was all over the news in Arizona, I couldn't. I could never work it. So I had to go to another medium, which is how I found the mentor that I had, and went to one of her psychic circles to see if any of those psychics could tell me anything. And this is all while I'm in homicide, and I wasn't there that long because I was just an intern. So, that's sort of that's how it unfolded.
But you said you've retired from all things law enforcement
it's so hard
now.
because I did it for so long. I know so much about it and what they need and how to extract the information and how to sit with somebody that I think is a suspect and get them to screw up.
Yeah.
It was hard to walk away, but we found human remains on a pilot I shot. That didn't get picked up. I'm like, cadaver dogs hit on the spot. Like, you guys, the police wouldn't dig. I was running into roadblocks on cases that I was working where even the one I worked for on Oprah was the Jackie Hartman case. She was a 19-year-old that disappeared out of Gilbert. And she gave me this to look at, and I wrote down, I said, this is sexually motivated. It's a date rape gone wrong. She's near a hibachi, like a barbecue out in sort of a deserty area. And she was like rolled down the hill, out of the car. And he didn't know he was going to kill her when he took her. And it was because she had fought back in this case. And they were like, her body hasn't been found yet. When will she be found? And I said 2 weeks. And 13 and a half days later, they found her remains. And because I seem to be pretty good at being able to get a time frame on finding remains. And sometimes that was the only solace I could give parents. But I needed to live a life.
Yeah.
I needed to think of something other than murder, but I do still brush up on forensics to see what's new out there.
Yeah. Do you teach others? How do you pass along all the stuff that you've learned over the years?
I wish law enforcement could work more hand in hand, but what I was saying with the Jackie Hartman case is Gilbert PD was talking to my guy that I was interning with at the time. And he's like, they said you were exactly right on, like everything you said. And then the chief above them came down and put the kibosh on it because they were wanting to reach out to me. And so I'll get police that I have a good relationship with, but the higher ups that don't want it being publicized that they've worked with a psychic. And I had this happen with the Texas Rangers, too. We'll try and put the kibosh on it. Unfortunately, with the Rangers, the show I was on, Paula Zahn's a bit of an investigative reporter, and she found the people that were like, oh, yeah, she totally worked with them. She's like, why do you think they're liars? And I'm on the air. I'm like oh, boy, I'm going to go to Texas again eventually. I said,
So you like come in and you do the work and everything's like great, and then everyone just wants to pretend like you weren't there and didn't do it.
Yeah.
And then.
Because I was too high profile. Like they didn't want that connection, which is.
Is it still that way, even years later?
I mean, I don't work murders anymore.
Do you ever want to?
You know, I'd have to have things my way. The resources it'd have to be done in my vision because I know what works.
Yeah.
I also know there's a timing to things, and sometimes living people's lives need to be affected by them finding the remains, how it sends them down a path of discovery in their own lives. So I'm not on the other side. I don't call the shots. I have to trust that there's a timing to finding remains and how it affects the living. And am I meddling with that? So being able to tell parents when they can find a body, if they're going to find the body, was helpful just so they know that they could bury him. But even in that case, the dad was highly religious and he wasn't happy that his family went on the show and let me profile that case. So,
does it like eat you alive? Like I feel like if I had a gift, I would want to know the answers to everything.
You get really tired.
Yeah.
Work, like seeing so much all the time. To know what it feels like to be in a pedophile's mind, to know what it feels like to be in Ted Bundy's head, or Dahmer. No, after a while, and my friend Adrienne Curry, she won America's Next Top Model the first season. She was like the really loud one. I thought she was very entertaining, but she always said, if I had what you have, I'd do it constantly, which is easy to say when you're not doing it. When you're doing it, you're literally dying a little each time you give yourself away to someone else so they can feel better. So even when I do readings for my clients, I give it everything I've got. I'm exhausted afterwards because I just died. Like I got shot or I had lung cancer, like because I feel
it.
the essence of what they went through. And it takes me a while to clear myself again.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do it all the time, especially with the murder and the rape details that you have to become privy to. But it's more getting in the criminal's head. It makes me sick.
Who is the scariest person, like what that you got into their head?
I mean, God, there's been so many. I think the one that scared me the most, and it was because he was sitting 5 feet away from me, was the first case I worked. So remember I told you how I did jury selection. I'm in the courtroom, and the law student, she was killed with a baseball bat. He was a minor league ball player that overstayed his minor league baseball. Like he was here for baseball. He had a visa. He was here illegally. Okay. So he overstayed it, and he saw her. She was right across the hall from him, and he really wanted her. And so he took her on the day they were being evicted. Anyways, he killed her in a very gruesome way. I'm sitting in the courtroom 5 feet from him, and he starts licking his lips and blowing me kisses. And I could feel his energy and her fear, and I'm just sitting in this moment. I wanted him bad. I wanted to put him on death row. I wanted him gone. I didn't want him getting out on a loophole and killing somebody else. So I see putting somebody away forever as protecting people.
Yeah.
So when he was doing that, it was really creeping me out. And he was so close, and he knew who, like he could recognize me.
Yeah.
His family he had some family that showed up, and it took me a while to shake that. But the beauty of that was they were losing a juror, and I looked at my friend and I said, "You're losing juror number, whatever number it was." I said, "She's thinking he might not be as violent as you're saying. Like she's one of those Neverland people." Yeah. So I'll just call him that.
Yeah.
And I said, you have to show them what he's made of. And she was like, "How am I going to do that?" And I said, "You're 5'10". He's 5'5", 5'6" at best. I said, he hates women. You need to get in his face." And so she goes over to him. She was so great. She goes, if you've never seen the face of evil, you're looking at it now. And she's standing over him and putting his finger in his face. And he's in shackles, like ankle and wrist. And he jumps up in his shackles and tries to like go after her.
What a moment.
Got the jury right
Holy
there.
moly.
It's like, dude, you did that one to yourself because I could feel we were losing one of our jurors.
Wow.
And he would be out there. So very gratifying.
So what's life now? if you've stepped away from solving crimes, what does life look like now? This other phase, your retirement.
No, I took a vacation for the first time in 20 years without working.
Really? Where'd you go?
We went our 30th anniversary. We went to the Bahamas.
Oh wow,
which was really nice. And then we went to Paris with our daughter Sophia.
Oh nice.
And we took her there, and that was. I didn't know what it felt like to get on a plane and not go to work.
Yeah.
It actually scars you a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
And so it takes me a few days to even relax. But I definitely couldn't do vacation more than like 5 or 6 days. I always have too much going on.
I'm the same way.
You know what I mean? You come up with new ideas. You're like, I need to do this.
It's like, it's rejuvenating. And you got to hit the right point with, like, between feeling like revived and then being like, if I don't actually like do something with all the things, like I'm going to go crazy.
Yeah. And in Paris, you drink a lot of wine. I was like, I'm sort of sick of wine now. I want a vodka drink or something different. But we had a great time. It was springtime in Paris. Very beautiful. So I came back all rested. 2 years ago, I had an idea that I wanted to create. And I know that I'm known on the Housewives with my ginormous martini glass.
Is that what was next to you?
It was a martini glass.
I thought it was a margarita.
Okay, first of all, they furnished those. I didn't show up with a backpack with a martini glass in it for my own special trough of martinis. They tried to make my lavender lemon drop that I always drank at Polo Lounge.
Funny.
I never saw Kyle at the Polo Lounge, for the record. I used to be there all the time with my friends. But they make the best lavender lemon drop. If you're in LA, go to the Polo Lounge, ask for it. Phenomenal.
Okay.
And so they were trying to replicate it. And it turned out to be more of a jungle in a glass. I don't know what the hell they put in it, but so I'm drinking that, and I look at the picture, and I'm memes. Like, people love sharing the memes of me. He will never emotionally fulfill you. Know that, like all of that. And so I thought, I have this university where I'm teaching mediums how to be better and for them to practice with each other and all that. But I also have a professor of earth magic, Margaret Jameson. She's Granny Magic online.
Okay.
She's great. And she was an Appalachian granny descendant. So anybody that knows anything about the Appalachians
Not me.
knows it was like the mountain women that came over from Europe when they were sort of more settling America still. And they were in like the mountains of Virginia and West Virginia, I believe. Don't quote me, I'm really bad at geography. But they were the women that birthed the babies and grew herbs and made medicines out of them and salves and would say sort of incantations, right?
Sign me up.
Right?
I know nothing about this, but I'm in.
Right? So Margaret sends me the oils that she makes, which was, there's like a love and there's a success ingredients. And I was like, God, I wish this was in vodka. So I thought, I should make vodka potions. And so I started getting all my liquor licenses a year ago. I got my distributor license as well. And One Hands and Bastards, my distillery in Scottsdale, lady-owned, and they're making the vodka. And I spent a couple years studying the properties that would go into each of those formulas that would be the most effective. Like, I was going on my feeling of which one would like bring more love or draw more money or success to you. So the QR code on the bottle is going to take people to a website that has videos of me showing how to set a proper intention, because people tend to do it wrong. They say, I wish or I hope. That never works. It has to be, I will. And you have to mean it. So I put the ingredients in there to enhance people's desires of what they want in their life so they could start taking control of their own life and drawing these things to them. So I have my love My money potion's what I brought you today.
Oh, I'll take it.
Yes, you got the first bottle, actually.
Oh, really?
That's a sample, yeah.
I'm so excited.
And then I'm doing the love potion is being distilled now. And then I'm going to create a resurrection potion. It thins the veil so you can communicate with the other side when you go to sleep.
That's the one I want.
So I'm really excited about this. And I tested the oils on my daughters, which are a different formula than what I actually came up with. I did it differently because I wanted it to taste good.
It helps.
And my daughter went on a ski appraise, like up an 80s style with all of her girlfriends. I'm like, great. I'm like, take this love potion tincture with you, put it in each of their vodka drinks, set intentions with them. Because when there's a group of women, it's really a coven. So you're collectively setting your energy intentions. So when you're saying, I will draw $1 million this year, or I will draw $5 million, or I will find that success, your friends are saying, Ashley will, or she will. And you just say it 3 times.
Okay.
So it's sort of like a prayer. For the people that get a little funny about it, it's more like a prayer, and it's what we do to cleanse ourselves as mediums when we're done in the shower. Down the drain, away from me, down the drain, away from me, down the drain, away from me. And you visualize the illness or the sadness going down the drain until through a pipe till you can't see it any longer. It's off in the distance. It's away from you. And you feel 20 pounds lighter. It's amazing. Your listeners should try it.
I think there is such power in words.
Yes.
And intention, like what you're saying. And to your point about religion and however people find it, because I grew up very religious.
Sure.
Not quite anymore.
Yeah.
But I think that's what prayer is when you get enough people together who are...
It's a collective energy.
Yes, collective energy.
Yes.
I completely believe that.
Yes. And so I thought it would be fun for women at bachelorette parties
Yes.
to do together, and maybe even brides and grooms to have a little sip of it after they say their vows afterwards to set their love intention with one another for life, and just sort of just the two of them, like have a moment. And so I think people are going to love it. I'm pretty excited about it. But my daughter went on the ski appraise, and they all tried it. And 2 of the girls the next day, their crushes texted them and said they did. And they said, would you like to go on a date? So now her friend...
Are ordering it by the box?
Right? Well, they're going to be doing a photo shoot this weekend. So they were all like, we'll do it for Mama DuBois for sure. Mama DuBois. She was in a sorority. I got a lot of girls now. But one of the girls is still dating the guy, and he's her boyfriend. Like, they're serious. So I'm really excited and happy. Someone set her intentions right.
I love that. Oh, my God. I'm so excited.
I'm excited, too. So I might make a protection one.
Wait. Diana's talking to me from outside. Let's bring it in. I want to do this.
The vodka is made in Scottsdale.
Okay.
So this is...
I love it. It's a little home for me.
I know. I love it. So this is American-made, Arizona conjured.
Love. Wait, so what do I have to do? I have to do an intention, right?
So think about, since this is the money potion, think about what you want to draw in. It doesn't have to be money. It could be any form of success in your life. So what would your success look like now if you were to draw it to you?
My success would be being able to do what I'm doing, but have more time for my family.
Finding a balance.
Balance, yeah, that's true success. Because right now I'm in a grind.
Yeah.
And I'm killing myself to do it, and I'm doing it well, and it's working.
Right.
But I can't this isn't.
And I've been there, so I sympathize with you. That's a hard one choosing.
Yeah, and so I think I want to have it all.
Yeah, and you can.
Yes,
you actually are.
Yes.
Having it all. So you want to get to a place in your career where you can maybe consolidate things down, maybe not spread out as many days so that you can spend more days in a row with your family. So the success would have to do with prioritizing your family. So I will prioritize my family over work, but then you'd be afraid you're going to hurt your work. Like, would your work go down then because the universe is giving you what you want for your family? You have to be very careful when you set an intention. So let's stay with, I will find a balance between my success and my family, or between my podcast and my family, however you want to word it.
Yeah, a balance between my work, my family, and myself. Because I think I'm good at actually giving my family time. It's just I'm nowhere in it. I will find balance.
So we'll do this, and then you take a sip, hold it in your mouth, swallow it, and then say "I will" and name that 3 times.
Okay. Ready?
Okay, cheers.
I will find balance. I will find balance. I will find balance. This is actually really good.
Yeah, right? It is, right?
I don't drink alcohol straight. This is actually
I've never
really good.
had a vodka that I could sip.
I've never either. When you told me we were going to be, when you said we're not mixing it with anything, I was like, oh, fuck.
Oh, I don't just drink shots of vodka.
This is good.
But you can taste the actual, like, berries.
Like rosemary
and
or like, oh, I don't know what's in it, but it's good.
There's some bay leaf in it.
Oh, it's good.
And each of the things that are grown in gardens represent something that it will help you draw into your life. And so I put in the ingredients, and they're all organic because I'm funny that way too. But actual like blackberry and bay leaf and other ingredients
really
like
freaking
that.
good.
Oh, I like it too.
Oh.
I know I like it.
What's your current intention?
So for me, it's so funny. Breaking into vodka, it's sort of not typical, right? And mine's a vodka potion. Who does that? I do, of course. My intention would be more for the vodka.
Okay.
That this will grow. Divination 22 will become sort of a household name. People will find their power. People will find and draw to them success and love in life. Like, I want all of these things for other people because I've married 30 years to the love of my life. And like my youngest points out, she's like, sorry, Mom, we don't all trip over them when we're 20 in a bar. And I was like, ooh, me too. I feel bad for you. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. But I want that for people. But I also want people to have that money success. And what they need to remember is you can't say, I want to win the lottery. I've had people say, they're like, I want to win. It's like, no.
Yeah.
What are you going to take? What vision do you have that you're going to create and make into something in the physical world that you're going to put energy into that the universe can help you make successful? What is your vision? So that's what this is for, not for the lottery. You don't get a scratcher and do a shot.
What's the name mean?
So divination, to divine, you're divining something out of energy.
Okay.
So divine was already so common when you Google it.
Yeah.
There are already too many businesses, just being honest.
Yeah.
I was like, divination. I'm like, classier anyways, divination.
Totally.
And then my dad's passing affected me, and it was part of my journey because I predicted his death. I knew he was going to die at 67 of a massive heart attack.
What is that like to know something like that?
Horrifying.
Did you tell him, or do you keep that to yourself?
I sent him to all the heart specialists. I think he knew when I did that. I'm like, Dad, you need to go get your heart checked. And he was a professional ballroom dancer for 50 years. So everyone's like, your dad's in great shape. He's so healthy. And I was like, I heard that voice and it said he's going to die at 67 of a massive heart attack. And this was 2 years before. I was so mad. But they checked his heart. They said he looked great. I had to get the medical examiner report after his passing, after the autopsy. I had to see it. It said clear signs of heart disease. So I knew that his passing was set in stone and it was part of my path. I needed to know what it felt like for my clients to lose somebody so close to you that you'd feel that pain.
Yeah.
And so I got it, and I know my dad would be happy because it helped a lot of other kids out there because I wrote chapters on how to deal with that kind of grief. But it's so funny. My dad always sort of wanted a little bit of fame, and he sure as shit got famous in my books.
Are you able to still see him, communicate with him?
He helps me do readings. I actually incorporated him into my daily life. I'll say, Dad, can you turn up their volume and focus their energy with the dead that he's there with? And if my living has low energy, I'm like, can you do that for them? And he adjusts their energy for the reading.
Can you ever change something that you see? So if you have a vision like that,
Yeah.
can it be changed?
Here's what I learned with that. It was such a hard lesson to learn. I always thought I had control because I would tell someone to fasten their seatbelt, like a client, when they got in their car and they roll their car on the freeway. I wouldn't see them rolling their car, but it was a feeling of them needing to put the seatbelt on. And they're like, or I'll say, get your chest scanned. And they find the beginning stages of breast cancer and they would remove it. So I was seeing all these people that I thought saving when I was really just being used as an instrument. I'm one of many instruments in the world. They could have whispered in the husband's ear that said to the wife, you should get a mammogram or something. Like, go get checked out. Like, they work through us. The other side works through us to save those that don't have to go. My dad's was set in stone. And what that means is there was nothing I could do to save him. So, sometimes the death has to happen to cause a ripple effect of good for many. They're almost sacrificial lambs, and I hate that, but they seem to be because no mother would willingly give up her child. Amber Hagerman that died, but for that little girl, how many countless other children wouldn't have been saved? And seniors now because they have the silver alert, So each one of us can make a difference. And I say to people, don't live a life that had no real meaning. Leave this world in a better place than you found it. Leave it with something. Change people, help people, inspire people, help them to live better. Do something. Don't go through life as
A filler.
So, not everybody's here for greatness, but that doesn't mean they can't be great in their life.
I completely agree.
Right?
I always tell people, I always wanted a big life, but I'm like, that doesn't mean that I don't think, like, my mom, like, I can meet my mom. My mom had a small life, but it was the most beautiful. And she, like, was so happy, and she got everything she wanted, and she would have been miserable with a big life.
Right.
But you can be, I think you can be important with a small life or a big life.
Absolutely. There are some mothers and fathers out there that I bring through that were everything to their kids, and they were the best parents. So when I say, like, live this life of abundant love, it doesn't matter if somebody believes in a religion on the other side. I bring through atheists all the time. But the thing that they all have in common is that they loved. They connected emotionally with people. They had big hearts. They were characters. They were the funny one. They were the relative that you look forward to seeing because Uncle Don's going to put that funny paper hat on and do the dance that makes everyone laugh, I mean, the characters, that energy vibration is so high a frequency, the dead can connect with them so much easier because they're a similar frequency. Low frequency people who don't love, people who don't try, people who aren't there for friends, people who are selfish. I'm interested to see in the next 10 years what the hell's going to happen to the tech generation.
Oh my God, you were just saying this on the podcast episode I listened to.
Yes.
Because you were saying that there isn't that kind of connection that they had in former generations. And you're like, I don't know.
I've never seen this before. And I've always had my finger on the pulse of what's going on in the country or the world. When Guitar Hero was big, I started bringing through young guys that were like playing Guitar Hero.
Guitar Hero, I remember that in a minute.
I know, they were having fun. And I watched young people go from dying in car accidents to fentanyl. Fentanyl. Every week I'm bringing through someone that died of fentanyl. They need to do something about that. You'll take your memories with you of your children, falling in love with your husband. You'll go back to the age that you fell in love. You'll go back to when your kids were little. You'll be on the other side replaying those moments as though they happened for the very first time for you.
I
know. So I think what people don't realize out there is we're helping our loved ones create their versions of heaven right here, right?
It's so funny you said that because a couple weeks ago I had this moment where I was sitting in my front lawn with my daughter and my dog, and I was like, oh man, I think this is like the happiest I might ever be.
Version of heaven. That'll be there for you on the other side, and you'll relive it as though it's happening. It's okay. No, I know how you feel. Like, it's so beautiful to know you have that. Like, you're going to have all of that on the other side. And you're still creating those moments.
Yeah.
You're so lucky.
I blame the vodka.
I want you to remember how lucky you are every day. Every day.
Well, even to living a full life, to not being a filler.
To living full throttle. To not being a filler. I'll drink to that. And fillers can stop being fillers right now. They can engage in life. You were talking about a balance.
Yeah.
The selfie girl, that's what she needed, but she probably won't find it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm so happy for you. I love it when I meet someone that's in love and they have beautiful, healthy kids. We are the luckiest people on the planet. Yeah. And I never, ever take that for granted. But I yell at my husband sometimes and I'll get in those moments. You know, we're not perfect. And those are moments that I'll bring people through, and I'll say, your mom says she misses bantering back and forth with your dad because they'd fight and then they'd kiss. And it was like their thing, you know? I love that.
Keep it spicy.
I love that. Oh, sometimes I see things where I'm like,
no thanks.
Too much.
Scandalous.
I had a woman I brought through, and she was a former cop, and I was bringing her through for her cop boyfriend, and he loved her. Like, they had a very rich life, I'm sure, together. And she was describing the lingerie that was his favorite and showing it to me. And I was just
You're like, no, thank you, ma'am.
I was like feeling what she was feeling. I'm like, no.
Oh, no. Did not ask.
I was like, I don't really want to be in this moment with the two of you. It feels kind of private.
All right. So where can people find you, find everything you're doing, find the vodka? Like, give me all the things.
AllisonDuBois.com, or they can email me at booking@AllisonDuBois.com.
And do you just do readings for anyone?
They get vetted.
Okay.
Because we got to weed some of them out, you know. But yes, I do them every week.
Does everyone cry like me? Even though you didn't even do a reading?
Often. Well, I make people feel, I evoke the feeling of what they know to be true in their soul, and I love that. So that's beautiful. Heaven's within you. You can feel it. And then I have deaduniversity.com if they want to sign up for classes.
Is that for anyone or someone who like knows they have a gift?
You know, here's the thing. Most people don't know. I'll put it this way. If you know who's calling before you answer the phone and you're right, probably have the gift.
Ooh. Is this pre-iPhone when I like have caller ID though?
Yeah. Well, or no. Or if the doorbell rings and you just know who's there, or you feel that your mom's in trouble. You feel like something's wrong and it turns out you're right. Or you try and get them to the doctor and they find a problem. You have abilities. Ooh. So a lot of people don't understand it because we only know our own perspective. Yeah. That's all we know. So if you have any of that, I've got a mediumship class. I have earth magic for potion making and spells for people who practice earth magic. They're sort of the garden witches, if you will.
Can anyone be one of those?
Oh, yeah.
Sign me the fuck up.
I know. Margaret would
My
love
husband
you.
is going to be so excited.
Yes.
Can men be?
Yes.
Can men be
I have
earth witches?
Okay. I have men.
Perfect.
No, it's great. And she shows you, like, she grows her own sage and sweetgrass and everything that she infuses in her sage spray. You're going to love her. Okay. So Granny Magic is what she's under on Insta.
This is how I find balance, by the way. I'm just going to like get real into earth magic.
That's good. No, that's really good. And so then I'm going to have Divination 22 vodka. Big Thirst is who I'm talking to try and get it online so that people can order over, in other states. Yeah. Because I'm just releasing it in Arizona first. I'm a hometown girl. Arizona's where I got my license.
Sun Devils for life, man.
Right? Right.
They chose a weird one.
I'll take it. It's a fork. Whatever. It's all good. So they're going to be able to find it in Arizona. Check out my website.
Okay. AllisonDuBois.com.
AllisonDuBois.com for updates.
Do you do social?
My daughter set up the Instagram for Divination 22 Vodka, and it has its own website, but it's not public yet. You're the first person
Get out of here.
outside of my family to ever try Divination 22.
Thank you.
So I brought this all the way from Scottsdale, Arizona, y'all, for you to try.
It. Thank you.
I'm actually going to leave it with you so that you can practice.
Thank you.
With your husband.
Oh, dude, he's going to love it. He loves it.
So that'll be fun.
I'm going to read the thing that I'm supposed to read at the end of every episode that I should have memorized by now, but I absolutely do not.
Oh, and The Dead Life. Go listen to my podcast,
yeah.
The Dead Life. Sorry. Too many irons in the fire. It's on Apple, Spotify. You can find it anywhere.
There's a lot of like numerology stuff. Like we didn't even like scratch the surface today. So if you guys found this conversation interesting,
thank you.
There is so much more there. Literally everyone in our office has gotten real into it.
I have death doulas. I have hospice nurses that are there at the moment the spirit leaves the body. I like to have different people from different walks of life perspective on death and the afterlife to try and make it less scary for people so that we don't fear death. And
I'm terrified right now.
And we live 100%.
I'm going to hit the back catalog because like it's one of the things that I just recently started getting real scared about.
Because you have children, you have something to lose and you'd be afraid that they won't remember you. Like if they're too young, you worry they're not going to remember you. Then they get older and you're like, will I be at their wedding? This is a process. It's part of motherhood. Yeah. So any women out there that are worried about those things, it's not because you're about to die. Yeah. It's about being a mother and you fear the things that you see other children go without. Yeah. And you don't want that.
It's so funny because my husband, he's always like, I know we're like over time, so sorry guys, but my husband, he's always like, I just like, when I die, no one will like, I won't have made an impact or no one will remember me. And I'm like, I don't care if I fucking like, I love you guys who listen, but like, I don't fucking care if strangers know me. But I'm like, that doesn't bother me at all. Like, I don't think about the same thing he does.
You can't really care what people who wouldn't be at your funeral think of you. Yes. That's how I look at life. If I don't love you enough and you don't love me enough that you'd be at my funeral, you don't give a rat's ass what those people think.
There's like
that's how I live my life.
And even famous people have a lot of people at their funeral. In my mind, I'm like, there's a few people who like, I care about what they think of me like day to day.
Right.
And if I respect them enough to be like, oh, if their view of me changed, like it would rock me.
So with your followers, it can be sometimes a little different or like cousins or somebody out more on the periphery. You want to engage with your listeners and it's important and we value and respect them. But when you get that, and they know what I'm talking about, like an online troll or something that's like telling you, this,
I've got haters, Allison.
So do I, Ashley. Maybe they should get together and go to happy hour, right? So I don't care what those people think. Either. Kyle's not part of my heaven. I could give a shit about Housewives, honestly. I don't care.
I do tell people, I was like, there's a difference. I am so grateful for the people who show up every week and who listen. Mostly because of what we're trying to do. It's like the mission behind it. And I need them to make a difference in the cases and show up. But I'm like...
They vibe with your energy, though. They vibe with your thoughts. And it's telling you that there's something that they want to learn that you have to offer. Yeah. That's a beautiful thing.
But I think that like what I care about is they care about what I'm talking about, not me. And I always felt like if I give too much...
They love you for your mind. They love you for your soul.
Such a big mind. I always felt like if I gave them too much power, the people who love me, you can't give them power without giving power to the people who hate you.
Right.
You can't like, you know what I mean? Like you can't just not read the bad comments because when you see one, it's going to mean everything.
See, I'm further down the line. I was when Instagram and all that came out for the first time in Twitter and Housewives Dinner Party from Hell hit. I was probably the first person to ever feel backlash on Twitter.
No way.
Oh, yeah. From that dinner party, I just was like, I walked away. My husband looks at my Twitter. I don't even look at Twitter.
My husband, I literally had to get him off Reddit. Like he was like, he went into like almost damn near suicidal depression.
Tell him to stop reading things. Your daughters too, because my daughters, as they were growing up, wanted to read things and they felt like they had to defend me. I'm like, babies.
No, I don't care.
You never have to defend me. These are strangers. These people don't care about us. They're not part of our lives.
They will not move the
I'm
needle.
like, do not spend the energy on those people.
And Eric's always like, what if it takes down the whole thing? Then I'm like, then I find another job. Right. And I like...
No, being yourself is so important. Being authentically you. And I don't mean like people on Instagram that are like, oh my God, be yourself. And then you go on Housewives and you're yourself and all of a sudden they have something to say. Am I right? Those are the worst people. Coexist. It's like, you guys are like not the best
people. Can we start like a what's the opposite of the Housewives show? I just want to start a reality show where you and I just like go and talk shit and drink vodka.
Okay, that would be amazing. That would be amazing. Like no edit. Yes. No edit. People would love it, but man, you would just have to hear everybody in the world's thought.
You wouldn't though. Just don't read the comments.
You would think there'd be some things in life we all agree on, like pedophiles are bad. We can't even get an amen to that.
No.
Like, what is that about? So you have to know what you stand for. People who believe in nothing fall for anything. Yeah. So even if it's a belief in spirituality, there is another side. There's life after death.
This has been my freaking favorite episode so far. I meant to read the credits 10 minutes ago.
I'm so sorry.
No, don't be. Thank you for coming. Don't forget to follow this show. Add it to your library. Don't forget to follow Crime Junkie wherever you get your podcasts. Also, Dead University. We'll have a brand new episode the last Friday of every month. But if you can't wait until then, you can head to Crime Junkie Radio on SiriusXM for your 24/7 true crime fix. And you can follow me, Ashley Flowers, on Instagram at Ashley Flowers or Ashley Flowers Crime Junkie on TikTok. I barely ever post. Bye.
I barely ever post.
TikTok is,
It's so awesome.
We're the worst.
Crime Junkie AF.